Hey, good evening. Hopefully somebody will yell at me and tell me if my mic isn't working right. Coming here live from BitHaven tonight to celebrate a very cool evening. My name is Bit, or if you couldn't tell by the changing voices every time somebody streams, TK here. And this is pretty cool. This is 4+ years in the making. Nobody's yelling at me that the audio isn't coming in clear, so I'm gonna keep going with this. So this is my 1500 day TryHackMe streak day. And if you guys aren't aware of what TryHackMe is, it's a gamified platform. It's free to use. They have their Advent of Cyber event coming up starting in December, which is a really cool event where you can win some prizes, do some holiday-based challenges. I thought about showing you one of those tonight, but honestly, I've already done all of them. But if you are looking to start your own streak of your own, then you might want to give December a try and earn some prizes as well. So, yeah. I know there's a bunch of really excited people here at the hackerspace. They bought cake, so I'm going to try to make this fast. I'm going to be giving away some vouchers, so if you at least comment once in the chat, I will pull some random names and I'll be giving away some vouchers to celebrate this. And if anybody from TryHackMe is watching, if you can get me some more advent calendars, that would be amazing. I regret only buying one at the time. Alright, so not gonna lie, I've been up since really early, worked today, came to this really awesome InfoSec 716 pre-holiday party, and now I'm streaming here. So I thought about picking more of a challenging room, but to be honest, I think my brain needs a little bit of a break, and I'm not here to bore you all. So I think of all these new ones, I've already done the CVE room. This is really cool. All the rooms on TryHackMe, my favorite ones are these CVE rooms. I think they give you the best examples of real-world scenarios and how you exploit and patch against CVEs. But I think we're going to do WAF tonight. I know TryHackMe, I think, has some restrictions against streaming at least the challenge rooms too quick. So I don't think there's a problem doing the walkthrough rooms. So we are going to learn about WAFs. And if you don't know about a WAF, it's a web application firewall. And believe me, as a cybersecurity professional, this has saved a lot of headaches. So we're going to join the room. And introduction. So you begin your pen testing expecting a hardened web application only to compromise it with a simple SQL injection. How? The WAF was absent, misconfigured, or bypassed. Despite being a staple of modern security architecture, WAFs are often misunderstood. They are usually treated as a magic shield when in fact they are complex systems with strength limitations and blind spots. Now, I would actually argue against that. I think they are magic shields. You can fight me on that one. But again, as a cybersecurity professional, I would have to say that without our WAF, I guess properly configured WAF, we would be in a hell of a lot of trouble. So here are the learning objectives. It's kind of cool. They have a whole bunch of different rooms that go into details and stuff. But with this, what does a WAF stand for? A web application firewall. You guys ready for this? Are you ready? Are you ready? I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this a long time. Woohoo! Alright, that's it. That's the end of the stream. We're done. I want cake now. It's cold in here. Yay! Alright, I'm gonna have to close this box as much as it's really cool to look at. Thank you everybody at BitHaven for the applause. So, probably should have started these already, but we're going to start our attack box and our target machine. I don't like that I can hear myself echoing out there, but anyways, so If you play around on TryHackMe, you're very familiar that each environment has its own virtual instance. It's really nice that you can come into the browser and you can just work through them. I know some people might be like hating on me for using Windows Explorer, but please just give me a break. I'm very, very tired. So we'll wait for that to boot up a little bit. I promise you guys, like, let them eat cake. You can eat cake. I won't be mad. We will wait for those to boot up, but we can just like go ahead and answer these. While we're waiting for those to start up, we'll just take note that, okay, it's going to be at the machine IP, which is getting spun up still. You can see it up here, and it auto-populates stuff, which is kind of nice. Your attack box is your main attack box that's populating over here. It's like a Kali in-browser box, if you aren't aware. And then we can access it via this URL. But let's go over a firewall refresher. So before we delve into the advanced solution, we'll just revisit history of computer firewalls. So in the early days of network computing, security was often an afterthought. I still kind of think it is a little bit of an afterthought, but it's not for the reasons that you expect. I think a lot of budgetary concerns happen where people have to choose between actually running their business and then implementing security. But that's another debate for another day. So as organizations begin connecting their internal networks to the outside world, specifically the internet, they realized they needed a bouncer at the entrance. They needed a way to decide which traffic is allowed to enter and which is turned away. Considering the technology available at the time, the answer was a stateless packet filter. So good old days. I'm going to boot up Firefox and go to that URL that was mentioned earlier. So anyway, stateless firewalls, the gatekeeper with no memory. As the name implies, a stateless packet filter or firewall is stateless. It's a gatekeeper with no memory. It operates at layer 3 and level 4 of the OSI model, which if you guys aren't familiar with the OSI model, there are plenty of rooms about that. Understanding actually how like network architecture works is very important for security. But anyways, where it can inspect IP addresses, TCP and UDP ports, some headers, and other protocols. This basic packet filter is entirely ignorant of the content of the traffic. Every packet is judged in isolation. Think of a border agent looking at a child's passport as if the child is traveling alone. So don't mind me. Copy and paste over here. So this security measure worked for a little while until attackers realized they could just abuse the fact that it's stateless. So in other words, an attacker would send a packet with an ACK flag set to trick the firewall into treating the packet as if it was part of the established connection. Because the firewall does not keep track of established connection, it may allow it to pass. It becomes clear that a more intelligent firewall is necessary. So the good old days where you could like pretty easily abuse things and take down websites and make them do all the fancy things that you want them to do. So we're going to make that bigger. By the mid-1990s, as attacks became increasingly complex, a new firewall model emerged, the stateful firewall. Unlike stateless firewalls, which inspect each packet in isolation, stateful firewalls keep track of active connections, which allow them to better judge a packet before letting it pass through. Think of it as a firewall being able to answer the question, does the packet belong to a legitimate ongoing conversation? So basically what this did was it tracked ongoing sessions, forging a packet with an ACK flag no longer could trick the firewall, which is good. And then like out-of-sequence packets and other anomalies could be detected and dropped. So basically if the firewall allows traffic outbound on port 443, an attacker simply cannot send a packet with a source port of 443, set the ACK packet and trick the firewall into treating it like a legitimate ongoing connection. So firewalls that understand layer 7, this is where we're actually getting into the WAF and where on that OSI model things lived. Again, like feel free to pull up a model of like the OSI if you don't understand where like all these layers are coming into place. So as improved security increased, new firewall technologies emerged on the market. Before exploring web application firewalls, in the next task, let's revisit 3 more types of firewalls. Application level gateway, which is the proxy firewall, deep packet inspection, and next-gen firewalls. I feel like everything's next gen still. Like, when are we past the next gen and onto like the next gen? But I guess we don't have a name for that. So application level gateway is a proxy firewall. So think of it as like a protocol interpreter. It's like a diplomatic interpreter who listens to your message and repeats it, ensuring that it does not contain any hidden slurs or secret codes. Unlike stateful firewalls that merely track TCP connections, ALGs terminate incoming connections and initiate new ones on the client's behalf. This setup provides them with complete visibility into application layer protocols such as HTTP and FTP, amongst others. Wow, this is a lot of talking. So ALGs have laid the conceptual groundwork for layer 7 inspections. So think of it as like living at that like top layer and is able to protect it a little bit better. We have deep packet inspection firewalls. Stateful firewalls inspect IP addresses and ports. It goes beyond headers to scan the actual payloads of packets, which is kind of cool because it can look for stuff like signs of malware or like peer-to-peer or encrypted C2 beacons. So it's not like a standalone firewall architecture, but it's kind of like a mix with like some modern threat protection systems. DPI alone lacks contextual awareness, so it can detect like a union select in a packet, but it can't tell if it's like legitimate or not, which is why like it evolved into something called this next-gen firewall. So kind of like this, where like a next-gen firewall is a stateful firewall that decided to get a PhD in context. I don't have a PhD. I know a couple people who got a PhD, and I think that's really, really cool. They didn't get the PhDs overseas where you get a sword, though, so I think they spent a lot of money for that. So, next-gen firewalls don't just ask, where's this traffic going? It asks, who's sending it? What application is it using? Is it encrypted? And all these really, really cool things that'll probably be a question later, and I'll have to go back and look, and it'll make me look really, really silly on stream. But, yeah, so this is a really cool table. It's really useful. Understanding where in the OSI things are like living and what they inspect. So which flag can attackers misuse to bypass a stateless firewall? I don't know, they mentioned ACK a lot. So, and then which firewall tracks active connections? So it's going to be one of these. And like I said, I'm kind of tired, so I'll probably mess up this a lot. Terminates and re-initiates the application layer. Let's go stateful. Ooh, more points. Oh wow, this is a lot of tasks. I kind of want to get to like the actual like, what are we doing with this VM over here? So WAFs inspect HTTPS traffic, so that S helps us understand that it's a little bit more encrypted than basic HTTP traffic, which is nice because it can't easily be intercepted. So at its core, it inspects that both inbound and outbound for signs of malicious intent. Unlike network firewalls that guard ports or next-gen firewalls that classify applications, a WAF speaks HTTP fluently, parses method, headers, cookies, query strings, and post bodies. So like, you look at all this information here, and as a security professional, it's all really useful, especially when tracking different kinds of attacks or what's going on with your application, what kind of network traffic is getting sent. And what's really cool is some of the modern day WAFs will automatically classify this sort of stuff. So it mentions to enforce policies. So a WAF can actually classify if somebody's doing like a file traversal attack or like a cross-site scripting attack, and that can block based on policies. So it strives to prevent against the OWASP top 10. Although it can't fix broken codes, WAFs attempt to mitigate known vulnerabilities without requiring source code changes. It's called virtual patching. So unlike real patching of vulnerable code, if the firewall rule does not cover a particular payload, it would pass it through and exploit the vulnerability. The power of a WAF. So although the WAF is not the only firewall that understands this kind of traffic, may be the only firewall that possesses in-depth knowledge of various attacks targeting web applications. So for instance, it would recognize this sort of stuff as like a SQL injection type probe. That's what that stands for if you don't know. And then stuff like this is like a cross-site scripting attack. So it's smart enough to recognize some of these sort of classic things. Deployments are summarized in the table below. So we have a cloud-based, which is like a reverse proxy, network appliance, and host-based, which is like embedded. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different types of security methods you can like pick for these things. You're obviously going to do what's best for your environment. What's nice too is it gives these common examples, because I'm sure a lot of this stuff winds up in the news, or you get vendors who are like, hey, I work at Fortinet, you should try this, or you hear like, Barracuda got pwned again. So this is what these things actually are. So, fingerprinting a WAF. It was once said you don't need to bypass a WAF to beat it. Sometimes just knowing it's there is half the victory. Yes and no. So, penetration testing a web application behind a WAF can be very frustrating if we don't recognize that a WAF is interfering with and blocking the different kinds of payloads we're attempting. Once we realize that a WAF is standing in the way, we can avoid wasting our time with certain payloads, but I mean, at the end of the day, you want to test those anyway, so as a pen tester, you want to make sure those policies are working correctly. So this section focuses on various techniques to discover a WAF in place. We can cover this sort of stuff. So there's automatic fingerprinting and passive header and that inspection and all these sort of fun things. So passive header inspection, read the name tag. The first approach would be to inspect the headers of a target web application from a terminal. You control I followed by the target URL, so you can spot these sort of things. So I think it wants us to like actually kind of showcase these, which is nice because my hand's getting cold and I like it to do things. So we can do a curl I, and then like it has this web application 1. I wonder if we can like do our target IP address, which is nice. They're all up here. So 10, 201, 93, 19. Yep. So over here they show like this one is using Cloudflare. We can see Nginx over here. But yeah, server is Cloudflare. So, and then here's another one using a different kind of WAF. This one is in Arabia. And then here's another one. So these are all just kind of like different examples. But yeah. So, watch how it reacts when poked. So, like, this one is more invasive than the first one, so it looks like it's going to have us doing some kind of, like, SQL injection or some kind of file traversal. Although the above are harmless, they resemble real attacks, and you should obtain permission before attempting to use them outside a lab environment. This is really important. If you do any sort of pen testing, red teaming, bug bounty, make sure you read the scope. Make sure you have permission before you start doing stuff. A lot of modern WAFs would like knock this stuff down right away. So, what's nice here is it actually inputs our vulnerable machine here. So we could just copy and paste, or we could do it ourselves. But I think because it just shows it right here, I don't know if we have to. I don't know. I guess we can. Let's go HTTP, whack, 10, 201, 90, 93, 19. I promise I can type, it's cold. Q equals test. Let's see what happens. And yep, so we're getting the same sort of response that we see in this attack box. So it pays to double check. You never know if you might find a bug in some of like the TryHackMe rooms. The newer ones have all been great though. Big kudos for them. So you can add these sort of different techniques. You can encode them. So that's what this is right here. It's like a web encoding. And then if you do this, it looks like it'll give us a 403 forbidden. And then here's a table over here that'll show classic responses and the likely meaning. So this is actually really cool. I don't think I've run across too many 406 is not acceptable. Custom HTML page with access denied is probably like the better option. Actually, 403 is probably the best because you don't want to really give away too much information. So it's kind of like a security through obscurity type thing. But yeah, so automated fingerprinting, let's let the tool do the heavy lifting. So instead of curl to manually enable to trigger various WAF rules, we can use a tool to do the work for us. So let's begin with like a baseline probe, issue a standard HTTP request, and analyze the response. If results are inconclusive, escalate with controlled set. If unresolved, analyze and collect responses. If it can detect over 500 WAFs, so here's a couple examples of this WAF. Actually, let's look out really quick. So here's a GitHub page for this code. It allows one to identify and fingerprint web application firewalls. So that's really cool. I've never heard of this before, but I like doggies, so I think this is a cool tool. Just 10 out of 10. If there's a dog and a wolf, it's good. Blindly download code from GitHub, people. So I'm assuming it's already installed on the attack box. Oh, WAF. It helps when you type things correctly. And it's not installed. What the frick? Okay. Well, that's kind of disappointing. So I guess we'd have to install that, but we'll get around to that. I imagine it might be in a later step anyways. So these are some of the outputs of the scan. This result showed the WAF was in place. You can see that it was detected. So here's like the fingerprinting, generic example reasons. The server returns a different response code when the attack string is used. Normal response code is 429, but response code to a file inclusion is 200. So this is excellent for detecting WAFs when it's installed. However, for checking a subnet, you might want to consider MMAT script. So it's this MMAT that has script help, and then we can go on from there. So like layer 7 would be the answer for this one. So what do you call mitigating vulnerabilities without source code changes? And we saw it up here. I've been rambling a lot, so I'm not even going to lie. Like, I kind of forgot about what the patching in place was called. It's called virtual patching. And what status code do you get if you attempt a SQL injection against this? So, pretty sure they did this one for us. So we get this 403 forbidden. I don't know if they want the entire string. I probably should have double checked that. I don't think so it does. Rolling along. So a signature-based WAF says, I know what a knife looks like. A behavioral WAF says, I know how a benign use of a knife is, such as cutting bread looks like. Or I know somebody holding a knife maliciously moves around. Fortunately, both can be fooled by one disguise and the other mimicry. So let's explore those type of detection mechanisms. Signature-based, it works by comparing the contents of each packet against a list of known malicious signatures. Generally speaking, such detection engines recognize what's malicious and rely on a knowledge to decide what's benign. For example, it would include matching rules like SQL injection patterns, such as this. So like typically like this or 1 equals 1, which is actually not good practice anymore. Tiberius has a really good write-up on why this 1 equals 1. He's a excellent web application pen tester, so go check that out. But yeah, that's an easy find of a SQL injection. Moreover, the WAF will respond with something like 403 forbidden. If the received request matches the rule. So let's see what else for attack. Evade signature rules using... Oh, encoding is a good one. I know I mentioned that before. You see like this mod 20. It's good for when you're attempting to do stuff in the actual URL line. So if you were to type over here, obviously certain characters you need to encode for them to like actually read properly. Case variation. So like this sort of stuff. Sometimes you can trick certain security tools by using different case sensitivities. And then you can do stuff with like comment insertion and then like alternative syntax. So you can replace like one syntax for another. So this is kind of like, hey, like let's do a long form, and it might help because it's looking for like this particular 1 equals 1 and only that. So if you put it into like here, you might get away with it. For the attacker to succeed, once they determine that a rule is blocking their payload, they need to make various changes and try again. Depending on the target WAF's rules, they might be able to evade detection. The main advantage of signature-based detection is that number of false positives, i.e. normal traffic incorrectly detected as malicious, is expected to be low. Furthermore, the rules are relatively manageable to write and understand. Finally, they can run as fast as running the code can match the incoming traffic. The disadvantages mainly lie in the fact that signature-based detection engines are as good as their signatures. So again, if you don't configure them rightly, or you have a vendor that writes very poor signatures, or just is behind the times, you might run into some troubles. They might miss malicious payloads due to encoding or other related techniques. I mean, like, hey, we're humans / robots / technology. I don't know if AI in the future will help fix this, but that just presents its own slew of problems. So needless to say, they cannot detect an attack if it's not within their signature database. Therefore, they cannot detect zero-day attacks and require constant updates. So you see that problem a lot, especially if the zero-day targets a WAF. Sometimes they're just like not fast enough to update a signature for those O days. So here's a summary again. Yay, tables. So there's some advantages. Low false positives, easy to understand, high performance. Like, I love regex. Yay, regex for the win. Disadvantages: blind to obfuscation, such as encoding and comments, can't detect O days, and requires constant updates. So that was signature-based detection. Now, behavioral-based is known as anomaly-based detection. So generally speaking, such kinds of detection engines are trained to know what's normal. Any deviation from normal is going to be flagged as an anomaly. To build a baseline for normal, exposing the engine to normal traffic is indispensable. So, sorry, I got distracted by the jingle on the screen like squirrel. So, like, let's just say standard HTTP post request is expected to look like this when the detection engine receives such thing as, like, here's again, this 1 equals 1, here's that SQL injection. The existence of special characters in the username along with white space is an apparent deviation from what a normal name looks like. So the main strength of anomaly-based detection is that it has a decent chance of blocking unknown and zero-day attacks, such as attacks that deviate from normal behavior. I wouldn't fully rely on that, though, because there's certain O-days that are just, like, getting trickier. But furthermore, they are better at detecting malicious traffic even when encoding, and similar tricks are employed. Finally, the detection engine will adapt to the application and get better over time. And the main disadvantage is that a high false positive rate is expected despite the necessity of undergoing a training period. It's also worth noting that compared to a signature-based detection, anomaly-based detections tend to be more expensive because of computation. And here's in a summary. So, advantages: catches unknown attacks, probably. Harder to bypass. Adapts to application logic over time. Which, this kind of makes it seem like if you just bombard it with, like, weird stuff, that things will happen. So, some disadvantages are high false positives, require a training period, and just computers are expensive from computation. So, hybrid detection in many modern commercial WAFs, a combination of both the previous approaches is used. So traffic might first undergo a fast signature check, then followed by, like, some kind of deep inspection. So which detection method uses known attack patterns? So that is, sure. Does it all one word? Aha, I can spell. What kind of attacks can behavioral detection catch that signature-based cannot? I think this is what it wants me to type. Yay! Alright, we're rolling through the tasks. I'm tired. Anybody wants a voucher, like, please comment in the chat, and I will randomly pick some. So, at the heart of every WAF lies its rule set, a collection of conditional statements that define what traffic is allowed, logged, or blocked. This is another big thing, is For a defender, you're only as good as your logs, and everyone's like, oh, firewall rules, like firewall logs kind of suck. WAF logs don't, though, but they can be pretty heavy on your logging system. So these rules are human readable, and often human written logic trees, which are usually expressed in a domain specific language. So here's how to read a rule. So this is first SQL injection. I don't know. I don't know how I'm supposed to read that one out loud. But here's the different tags, case of severity, matching certain variables, yada yada. So the trigger, second rule, request base name is the text SQL injection. First line, we have the following. So second rule, standard mod security derivative to a defined rule. Request base name, the variable refers to a file name or endpoint in the URL path, for example, API user, and base name is 123. So this is the call to libinjection, specialized C library designed for detecting SQL injection. It's worth noting that libinjection tokenizes input like a real SQL parser instead of matching strings like or 1 equals 1, which is actually pretty cool that it tokenizes them. So here's some more stuff for the rule, meta, unique identifiers, run during the request body processing, so after headers, so I'm assuming phase 1 would be headers. Actually, headers might be 0, and app logic might be, I don't know. So block is the take action, capture, save the matched payload for logging. Input normalization, see through the noise. So before it runs, it's normalized through a pipeline of transformations. If you don't know, like a lot of normalization happens behind the scenes when it comes to like anything. The biggest thing right now is normalizing AI and feeding that into AI. So I think I couldn't get through one stream without mentioning AI. So here's some more of how it's written. Convert to UTF-8, perform recursive URL decoding, remove null bytes. So this is basically how it normalizes stuff. It's crucial to decode the contents before checking, otherwise it would be easy to miss the encoded threats. So logging attribution, make incidents actionable. The following 2 lines, we log a human readable alert. So this is what the message would be. I know we see different kind of messages like this in our actual logs. Log data, match data, so this is where it would match. So the message is the human readable alert that shows up in the logs in SIM. Log data is the forensic details which we care about. And then connecting the standards and strategy, now it's time to tag traffic, operational hooks, blah blah blah. So yeah, OWASP, attack SQL, blah blah blah. So there's different formats and tags, so common attack pattern enumeration for threat modeling. This is a PCI requirement here to protect against injection flaws. Paranoia level, so this is basically how strict it's going to be before it blocks something. It might have higher false positives, used in high security environments, and then there's a link for paranoia levels there if you really want to read about them. And then scoring telemetry, feeding the anomaly engine. So finally, we can use detected traffic to update our risk score with these 2 lines and achieve the following. So I'm going to kind of skip some of that. So which library does OWASP CRS use to detect SQL injection? And it was up here, and I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm tired. Lib injection. Copy. Lucky I'm streaming, or else I would have called it a night already. Which transformation handles double URL encoding? So we go back up here to transformation. Where was it? You guys getting dizzy from me going, whoa, whoa. Transformation. I think they want this entire thing. Oh, this one. No? Does it just want the URL decode uni? It might just want that. Yep. What score is increased when critical rule triggers? So we saw it up here. Is it the paranoia level? No. Also can't spell again. Which scores increase on a critical rule triggers? Was I just spelling it wrong? No, it's not that one. Is it just an anomaly score? Oh, I guess it was. Okay. Log in the dashboard at this. Oh, yay, we get to actually go to the screen. Under attack control, do I have to sign in? I guess I have to sign in. Why didn't you guys tell me to sign in before? Admin 1234. Please don't make your password admin 1234, or do it. I don't care. It's your environment. Follow me for more security tips. So yep, log in under attack control. Where's the critical attack? Block, block, block. These are all blocked. 11, 12. So this one. Is it jumpy for you guys too? Yeah, it's jumpy. It won't let me click. That's no fun. Can I go into this? Under attack control. I don't see attack control. There it is. I promise you I'm smarter than this normally. So we're gonna look for the one from this one. View. So was the URI that triggered this rule, and it is this. Or it's not that. Did I look the wrong time? No, it's this one. It looks like it's looking for a file traversal path, actually. That's why. Like, it helps if I actually read which one it's looking for. So 932. 1538. Locate the attack that triggered rule 932160. There it is. Yep. I should have known by the way this was formatted I was looking for a file traversal. So in case you guys don't know what this attack's actually doing, it's looking to actually read from this etc password. So it's a file traversal attack where it hopes it can go down so many directories and then it will output that read. There we go. Alright, so limitations of WAF. Before concluding this room, it's worth visiting some limitations of WAF. Oh, that's good. It sounds like we're nearing the end because I do want cake. What prevents WAFs from inspecting traffic if not terminated by WAF. So anyways, so WAFs only work if rules are good. WAFs are as good as their rules, although this might seem obvious, it's worth emphasizing here. Signature-based rules are likely to miss new payloads, obfuscation via encoding, comments, or even white space. It's even possible to evade via regex-based rules, and I can probably think of a couple people off the top of my head who could probably do this. So Furthermore, a sizable number of organizations run WAFs in log-only mode due to the high rate of false positives. If you're running your WAF in log-only mode, you're doing it wrong. Like, why even have a WAF if you're just running it in log-only? Hashtag spicy comment, I guess. So WAFs don't understand application logic. One of the biggest misconceptions when setting up a WAF is it can stop all web attacks. The expectation is unrealistic because WAFs don't understand the application logic, cannot determine if a user should be allowed to edit another person's profile or a price parameter has been tampered with. These are all business logic flaws and WAFs are blind to them. Very, very good web application pen testers, man. They can find the best business logic flaws. Like, there's some real mastery out there. Consider the real examples of real world impacts. IDOR, man, IDOR still being around today is crazy. But yeah, you still see it on bug bounty programs. So in the request, if you change this endpoint from 123 to 1234, it might just move on and show you this actual thing, even if you're not supposed to. Authorization bypass. If a user can access admin without being admin, the URL looks benign, and the WAF cannot detect anything wrong because that's normal behavior pattern. And then race conditions and replay attacks. Similar to such attacks don't involve any malicious syntax for the WAF to detect. So WAFs filter syntax and not intent. So that's always the problem in cybersecurity too, is judging intent. But that's another rant for another day. So encrypted traffic is a blind spot. Encrypted traffic is a blind spot for defenders too. So if your WAF doesn't decrypt traffic and actually log that decrypted traffic, it's kind of a blind spot for defenders. So if encrypted traffic cannot be inspected for malicious payloads, therefore modern WAFs sit before the TLS termination points and monitor all HTTP traffic. However, if encryption occurs before the WAF would always see encrypted blobs and not the actual request. So you might see different setups where the WAF may have some means to decrypt the traffic, and then it might re-encrypt it before sending it along. But it should be noted that TLS is terminated at the WAF. A certificate management adds complexity and the risk of the setup. Furthermore, some organizations avoid decryption due to privacy or compliance concerns, which is another real-world problem. Client-side attacks fly under the radar. WAFs inspect server-bound traffic only, so therefore we cannot expect them to block attacks happening completely in the browser. So DOM-based cross-site scripting, the payload executes in the browser and never sets to the server. So consider malicious first-party scripts. But yeah, so if they never make it to the WAF, then the WAF isn't exactly going to help. So WAFs introduce new attack surfaces. So ironically, adding a WAF introduces a new attack surface. In fact, poorly configured custom rules can introduce RCE, which is remote code execution. For example, by dynamically constructing mod security rules and failing to properly escape input. Also, care should be taken that complex regex or large payloads do not lead to a DDoS due to memory exhaustion. Hashtag Cloudflare. Hashtag Azure Front Door. Hashtag so many things. Furthermore, if the management interface is exposed to a public IP address, which, oh my god. So, funny, not funny, if your management is exposed via a public IP address, please just leave. No. You know how many CVEs we see and we look and we're like, oh, we're fine because our management interface is not exposed to the public internet. I don't understand. So, anyways, the attacker would gain access to the new WAF admin login page, which allows them to brute force it. Or worse, the management user interface might be vulnerable to an RCE vulnerability. Hey! Yep, there's an CV. Performance versus security trade-off. It's worth noting that deep packet inspection occurs, CPU cost times. So WAF needs to do regex matching against large payloads. Actually, a lot of WAFs right now, they have if it's too large a payload, it'll just drop it because it senses it's an attack. So I mean that's another good way. As traffic scales, it's essential to watch for increases. Finally, deploying a WAF or other security solution does not mean that the systems become miraculously secure. One should be careful not to fall into a false sense of security. On one hand, a properly configured WAF will add to security and even help meet compliance requirements. However, cybersecurity is built through a comprehensive security policy and various security solutions, defense in depth. So what prevents WAF from inspecting traffic if it's not terminated at the WAF? That would be encryption. Bye-bye. Yay, we're at the end. So again, WAFs are not silver bullets. They're complex tools, and they're only as good as how well you configure them. They can mitigate known vulnerabilities, enforce virtual patching, filter malicious traffic. Yeah, all these things. So we've seen in this room that WAFs are the result of firewalls evolving from simplest stateless filters to deep inspection engines capable of parsing HTTP traffic, detecting anomalies, and blocking entire classes of attacks such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. However, their effectiveness depends on well-crafted rules, proper deployment, and a clear understanding of their limitations. Also, it wasn't mentioned here because I think it's implied, but if you do not put the WAF in front of your application, then you're just, whatever, your application's done there. Which actually can happen in environments where applications get skipped and they're not actually put behind a WAF. So a WAF cannot fix faulty business logic, making it blind to IDOR, privilege escalation, or even a form of value manipulation. It's powerless against encrypted and client-side traffic. Furthermore, poorly configured WAFs can introduce new attack surface from rule injections to expose management interfaces. Oh my god, please don't do this. Please don't do this. If there's anything you take away from your stream, please do not expose your management interface to the internet. WAF is best used as a part of defense in depth, not a replacement for secure coding. Unfortunately, if the underlying application is flawed, no amount of filtering will truly make it secure. So what principles should guide a WAF when using a defense strategy? That is defense in depth, people. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh. C. Woohoo! We're finished, and we're at that 1500 streak mark. Thank you again for everybody joining. Actually, really quick, let's terminate this because we care about TryHackMe's compute power. Let's terminate this, blah blah blah. And let's go really quick. Let's see my badge. Let's see the badge. Okay. Do. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Man. I wonder how many people have this one. I know at least one other person who has this badge. I don't think there's that many psychopaths out there. But yeah, again, thank you for joining me. It's been fun. I want some cake and to go to sleep. But thanks for celebrating with me, and I guess tune in next time on BitHaven, hackerspace, all that fun stuff. So, have a good night.